Nobody ever talks to us." Her tiny hand signed the confession slowly, as if even hope had gone quiet. In a room bursting with balloons, laughter, and children chasing bright colors, two little girls in matching red dresses pressed themselves against the wall, invisible in plain sight. Parents snapped photos, executives clinked champagne glasses, and the CEO hosting the celebration never once looked toward her own deaf daughters, the ones watching the party like ghosts at their own funeral. No one saw them, and the few who didn't care. Except a single dad, an exhausted janitor pushing a cleaning cart, Vincent Parker. He knew what it felt like to be ignored until you disappeared. And he had every reason to keep his head down, avoid the memories sign language always dragged back to the surface. But something in their eyes, that quiet surrender, pulled him across the room. One word, one gesture. Hello. That tiny sign would shatter 5 damaged lives wide open and let the light in. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love seeing how far our stories travel.
Vincent's body screamed exhaustion as he emptied another trash bin near the activity stations. 3 hours of sleep, construction work from 7 that morning until 2 in the afternoon. Now this emergency shift covering the annual Whitmore Industries fundraiser, because Jerry had called in sick and Vincent needed every dollar he could scrape together. His janitor uniform felt heavy. His hands ached. At 35, he felt 70. The atrium had been transformed into a carnival for kids. Face painting, balloon animals, game booths, a small petting zoo in the corner. Dozens of children ran wild, their laughter echoing off the glass ceiling. Whitmore Industries executives worked the crowd, shaking hands with donors, posing for photos with families. The whole scene radiated success and joy. Vincent kept his head down, invisible. That's how he preferred it. Then he saw them. 2 small girls, sitting on the floor, against the far wall, knees pulled to their chests, watching everything with expressions that made Vincent's chest tighten. Identical twins, maybe 6 years old, with long ginger hair cascading over red dresses. They sat perfectly still while chaos swirled around them, children running past without a glance, adults stepping around them like furniture. Vincent watched a group of kids race by, laughing. The twins' eyes followed them, hopeful for just a moment. Then the kids disappeared toward the face painting booth without acknowledging the girls existed. The twins' faces fell back into that terrible resignation.
Vincent's feet moved before his brain caught up. Cart abandoned. As he got closer, he noticed the small devices in their ears. Hearing aids. Understanding crashed over him. They were deaf. Every instinct told him to turn around, walk away, don't get involved. Sign language meant remembering Evelyn, her hands flying through conversations, her silent laugh, the way she'd sign, "I love you" before bed every night. It meant remembering who he used to be before grief buried that man alive. He stopped walking. His hands clenched into fists. But one of the twins looked directly at him, and Vincent saw something that destroyed every defense he'd built. Not just loneliness. Acceptance of loneliness. These children had already learned they didn't matter. What would Evelyn do? The thought hit like a physical blow. His wife would sit with them, make them laugh, remind them they were worth seeing. Vincent took a shaking breath. When had he become someone who walked away from kids who needed exactly what he could give? He sat down on the floor beside them, ignoring his aching back and the stares from executives who probably wondered why the janitor was sitting with guests. Both girls startled, eyes wide with surprise that an adult had actually approached. Vincent's hands felt rusty as they formed signs he hadn't used in 3 years. But muscle memory took over. "Hello, my name's Vincent. What are your names?" The twins' mouths dropped open. They looked at each other, confirming they were really seeing this, an adult speaking their language. Slowly, the girl on the left signed back, her small hands tentative. "I'm Sky. This is Moon." "Those are beautiful names. Why are you sitting here all alone?" Moon's hands moved with heartbreaking matter-of-factness. "Nobody talks to us. They never do." The words, or signs, hit Vincent like a sledgehammer. These children, at 6 years old, had accepted invisibility as their permanent condition. Not today. "Well, I talk to you," Vincent signed, feeling something crack open in his chest, something he'd kept locked tight for 3 years. "And I have an important question. Do you know why elephants never forget?" Both twins shook their heads, confused but curious. "Because nobody ever tells them anything worth forgetting." There was a terrible joke, the kind Vincent used to tell his ASL students to break the ice, back when he was a teacher, back when he was someone else entirely. But Moon's serious face cracked into a smallest smile. Sky's eyes lit up like someone had flipped a switch. "That's silly," Sky signed, but she was grinning. "You think that's silly? Wait until you see my dad dance." Before they could respond, Vincent launched into the most embarrassing dad moves he could manage while sitting. Exaggerated shoulder shimmies, ridiculous hand waves, a seated version of the Running Man. The twins stared for a shocked moment, then their faces transformed. Giggles, then full, silent laughter, their small bodies shaking with joy.
Vincent kept going. He told him about the time he tried to teach a dog sign language, and the dog just licked his hands. He pretended to be a confused penguin trying to fly. He made funny faces that had Moon holding her stomach. For the first time in 3 years, Vincent's hands didn't feel heavy. They felt right. The commotion drew every gaze. Parents paused mid-photo. Children froze with paintbrushes in hand. At the edge of the celebration, a single, exhausted janitor, Vincent Parker, single dad, had 2 little girls in matching red dresses bent over in laughter. Their laughter rang out, clear, loud, echoing down the hall above the balloons and chatter, even though they couldn't hear the sound themselves. Their ponytails whipped, their shoulders shook, their laughter flew like bright sparks in the air. All eyes turned. Event staff whispered to each other, pointing. Across the atrium, Megan Whitmore stood frozen mid-sentence, her pitch to a potential investor dying on her lips. She'd been so focused on closing this deal, on maintaining the company her late husband had built, on keeping everything under control, because control was the only thing preventing her from falling apart completely. But now her daughters, her precious Moon and Sky, were laughing, really laughing, the way they hadn't since before the accident 18 months ago that had killed their father and taken away their hearing, leaving their voices quiet ever since. Megan watched this janitor sign fluently, his expressions animated and warm, watched her daughters light up like stars, their hands flying in conversation, their faces radiating pure joy. He was doing what she should be doing, what she'd failed to do despite all the tutors and classes and expensive therapists. Shame burned through her chest like acid. The investor said something. Megan didn't hear it. She excused herself and walked toward her daughters, her heels clicking on the polished floor with each step. Vincent noticed her approaching, a tall woman in a designer suit that probably cost more than his monthly rent, her long brown hair perfectly styled, her face carefully composed. When she reached them, Moon and Sky's laughter faded. They sat up straighter, their joy dimming. That told Vincent everything he needed to know about their relationship. "You speak sign language," Megan said, not a question. "Yes, ma'am. I was just keeping them company." "They're my daughters." Megan's voice was tight. "I haven't seen them laugh like that I can't remember how long." The guilt in her eyes was unmistakable. Vincent recognized it. He saw the same thing in his bathroom mirror at 3 in the morning when he wondered if he was failing Elijah. "They're wonderful kids," Vincent said quietly. "Smart, funny. They just needed someone to talk to them. I should be able to do that." The words came out raw. Vincent started to respond, but Megan shook her head. "I need to talk to you. After the event, please."
The fundraiser ended at 7. Vincent was collecting his supplies when Megan appeared in the doorway of the storage closet. She'd lost the confident CEO mask. Now she just looked tired. "Can we talk? 5 minutes?" They ended up in a quiet corner of the employee break room. Megan sat across from Vincent, her fingers twisting together, a nervous gesture that made her seem human instead of untouchable. "My name is Megan Whitmore. I own this company. Those girls, Moon and Sky, are my daughters." Vincent nodded, waiting. 18 months ago, my husband was driving them home from a birthday party. A tire blew out on the highway. Her voice trembled. James didn't survive. The girls were in the back seat. The impact damaged their hearing. Almost completely. She swallowed hard. They can still use their voices, but after the accident, they barely try. Words hurt. Speaking reminds them of what they lost. So now, they mostly sign and laugh when they feel safe enough to let joy slip out. I'm sorry, Vincent said, meaning it. He knew that weight. The way loss compressed your chest until breathing felt like a luxury you didn't deserve. My wife died 3 years ago. Heart failure. She was 36 years old, and her heart just stopped. Middle of a Tuesday afternoon while she was making lunch. The memory still had claws. Coming home to find paramedics in her kitchen, Evelyn on the floor, Elijah screaming in the neighbor's arms. She was deaf from birth. We communicated entirely in sign language. I was an ASL teacher at the community center. That's how we met. She came to a workshop I was leading. We built our whole life around that language. Megan asked softly. I quit 3 months after she died. Couldn't do it anymore. Every sign reminded me of her hands. Every gesture felt like reopening a wound that wouldn't heal. He gestured to his janitor uniform. Took these jobs instead. Construction during the day, janitorial at night. Been running for 3 years. But you stopped running today.
Vincent thought about Moon and Sky's laughter, about how his hands had felt right for the first time since Evelyn died. Yeah, I guess I did. Megan leaned forward. I want to hire you, to teach me sign language properly, to teach me how to communicate with my daughters the way you did today. I'll pay you whatever you want. Vincent started to refuse automatically, but he paused, really thinking about it. Today, when he'd sat with those little girls, he hadn't felt the crushing grief he'd expected. Instead, he'd felt connected to something good, to Evelyn's memory without the pain drowning everything else, to the passion he'd once had for teaching, to the man he used to be. Maybe running wasn't helping. Maybe honoring Evelyn meant doing what she'd loved most, helping people communicate, building bridges, making deaf children feel seen. Maybe it was time to stop punishing himself for surviving. I don't want your money, but I'll teach you. Every evening before my night shift. 8 to 10. 2 hours. Relief flooded Megan's face. Thank you. Thank you so much. One condition. You bring Moon and Sky to the lessons. This isn't just about you learning signs. It's about rebuilding the connection between the three of you. Tears spilled down Megan's cheeks. Okay. Yes, we'll be there. That night, Vincent went home to their small apartment and found Elijah sleeping on the couch, a book open on his chest. His neighbor, Mrs. Chen, had let herself in to watch him like she did every day. Bless her. Vincent gently shook Elijah awake. Elijah blinked up at him, his brown hair sticking up at odd angles. Dad, you okay? Vincent's hands moved slowly, hesitantly, forming signs he hadn't used with his son in 3 years. I met 2 little girls today. They reminded me that your mom would want me to stop being afraid. I'm going to start teaching sign language again. Elijah's eyes went wide. Then, tears streaming down his face, he signed back. Mom would be happy. Vincent pulled his son into a hug, both of them crying, finally allowing themselves to remember not just the pain of loss, but the beauty of what they'd had. The lesson started the following week. Megan arrived at Whitmore Industries at 8 sharp with Moon and Sky, who practically bounced when they saw Vincent waiting in the conference room. The first session was awkward. Megan struggled with hand positions, mixing up similar signs, forgetting movements she'd practiced at home. Her daughters watched with patient surprise, clearly shocked their mother was really trying. But she kept showing up, every single evening. Sometimes straight from important meetings, still in her power suits,
other times in casual clothes, having left work early to pick up the girls herself instead of sending the nanny. Vincent watched her transform. The rigid CEO mask cracked further with each lesson. She laughed at her own mistakes. She lit up when she successfully signed a complete sentence. Most importantly, she started really seeing her daughters, not as problems to solve, but as the funny, smart, loving children they were. Moon taught her the sign for butterfly, because Megan mentioned missing the butterflies in their old garden. Sky signed jokes Vincent had taught her, making her mother laugh until tears ran down her face.
During their third week while practicing, Sky's small hands moved deliberately. "Mommy, you're getting better." Megan's face crumpled. "I'm so sorry it took me this long." "It's okay," Moon signed. "You're here now." 4 weeks into the lessons, Vincent's neighbor, Mrs. Mary, called with bad news. She'd fallen and sprained her ankle, needed to rest for a few days. Vincent's stomach dropped. He couldn't afford to miss work. Elijah couldn't stay home alone. "Bring him with you," Megan said when he explained before that evening's lesson. "The girls have been asking about him anyway." Vincent hesitated. He'd mentioned Elijah during lessons. The twins were always curious, signing questions about what he looked like, how old he was, if he knew sign language too, but bringing him felt like mixing his broken personal life with this fragile new thing. "Vincent," Megan said gently, "it's okay. Really. Bring him." So that evening, Vincent arrived with Elijah in tow. His son clutched his backpack straps nervously, eyes huge, as they walked through the gleaming lobby with its marble floors and expensive artwork. "Dad, this place is really fancy," Elijah whispered. "Wait until you see the conference room," Vincent said, trying to sound confident even though his heart was hammering. What if the kids didn't get along? What if this was a mistake? When they entered, Moon and Sky were already there, practicing fingerspelling. Both twins looked up and their eyes went huge when they saw the boy with short brown hair standing beside Vincent. "This is my son, Elijah," Vincent signed, gently pushing his son forward. "Elijah, these are the girls I told you about. Moon and Sky." Elijah stood frozen and Vincent's chest tightened. His son hadn't really interacted with other kids much since Evelyn died. He'd become quiet, withdrawn, spending most of his time alone reading or drawing. What if... Then Elijah's hands moved, slowly, carefully, forming signs Vincent hadn't seen him use in years. "Hello, my name is Elijah. Nice to meet you." Moon and Sky's faces exploded with surprise and delight. "You know sign language?" Sky signed excitedly. "My mom taught me," Elijah signed back, and Vincent saw his son's eyes glisten. "She was deaf, like you." A moment of heavy silence, understanding that only children who'd lost parents could share. Then Moon stood up and walked over to Elijah, looking at him with serious eyes. "Our dad died too, in a car accident. My mom's heart stopped working. I miss her every day." Vincent glanced at Megan and saw tears streaming down her face, both parents watching their children connect over shared grief in a way that was both heartbreaking and beautiful. Then Sky joined them, and suddenly she was signing something that made Elijah's face light up. "Do you want to see us do handstands? We've been practicing." Elijah's face lit up. "I can do handstands too."
Just like that, the heaviness lifted. The 3 children moved to the open space, and suddenly they were attempting handstands. Giggling, Moon and Sky silently, Elijah out loud, competing to see who could hold the position longest. Vincent and Megan abandoned the lesson plan completely and just watched, amazed. "I can also do cartwheels," Elijah signed, when they all collapsed on the floor breathless. "Show us," Moon signed eagerly. Elijah demonstrated, a wobbly cartwheel that wasn't quite straight but earned enthusiastic applause. Then Sky wanted to try, and Moon insisted she could do it better, and suddenly they were all taking turns, laughing at failures, celebrating successes. "I haven't seen him like this in 3 years," Vincent said quietly to Megan. "He's been so sad, so withdrawn. I thought maybe that was just who he was now."
They haven't had any friends since the accident, Megan replied, voice thick with emotion. Other kids at school don't know how to talk to them. They eat lunch alone, play alone. I thought maybe that was just how it would be. They watched Elijah teach Moon and Sky a clapping game, the three children's hands moving in complicated patterns, stumbling, laughing, trying again. Your dad is funny, Moon signed to Elijah. He told us a joke about elephants. My dad tells terrible jokes, Elijah signed back, grinning. Want to hear the worst one? Both twins nodded eagerly. Why did the bicycle fall over? Because it was too tired. Moon and Sky groaned and laughed simultaneously, and Elijah looked so proud, Vincent's heart could have burst. Then Sky got serious. Do you talk to your mom? Like, still? Even though she's gone? Elijah's smile faded, but he nodded. Sometimes, at night. I tell her about my day. Dad says it's okay, that she can still hear me somehow. We talk to our dad, too, Moon signed. Mom says he's watching over us. Maybe they're together up there. Maybe they're friends now. The simplicity and hopefulness of it, that their lost parents might be friends somewhere, made both Vincent and Megan turn away to wipe their eyes.
As the evening wound down, the three children were inseparable. They exchanged favorite colors, Elijah blue, Moon purple, Sky yellow, favorite foods, unanimous agreement that pizza was supreme, favorite animals, a lengthy debate between dolphins, tigers, and penguins. Can Elijah come back next time? Moon asked her mother, her small face hopeful. Megan looked at Vincent, who nodded. I think that can be arranged. When it was time to leave, all three children hugged goodbye, Sky holding on to Elijah extra long, making him blush. As Vincent and Elijah walked to the parking lot, his son slipped his hand into Vincent's, something he hadn't done since he was 5. Dad, Elijah said quietly, those girls are really nice. Can we see them again? Not just at lessons? Vincent looked down at his son, at the hope blooming in his eyes, at the faint smile still on his lips. Yeah, buddy, we definitely can. That night, after Elijah fell asleep, Vincent sat in the dark living room and cried, but not tears of grief this time. Tears of relief, of gratitude, of something that felt dangerously close to hope. His son had laughed today, had made friends, had remembered his mother without drowning in sadness. Maybe they were both finally learning to live again. After that evening, everything changed. Elijah came to every lesson, and the lessons evolved into something more. Family time. Megan started bringing dinner, and they'd all eat together in the conference room, the children chattering in sign language while the adults looked on with full hearts. Vincent started turning down construction shifts. The money was tighter, but Elijah needed him present more than he needed extra cash. And when Megan found out, she didn't just offer him money, she created a real job, ASL coordinator for Whitmore Industries' new accessibility program. It's a real job, she said when Vincent tried to refuse. Salary, benefits, health insurance, regular hours. You develop training programs, work with our HR department, help us become a truly inclusive workplace. Megan, I can't. Yes, you can, and you should, because you're good at this, Vincent. You're good at building bridges, and you deserve stability. Elisha deserves a father who isn't exhausted all the time. So Vincent accepted. For the first time in 3 years, he could breathe, could be present for his son, could sleep more than 3 hours a night.
The romance between him and Megan grew gradually, like spring after a brutal winter. Quiet conversations after the children fell asleep during movie nights at Megan's house. Coffee meetings that stopped being about sign language and started being about everything else. Stolen glances across conference tables, hands brushing when they both reached for the same teaching material. Neither of them rushed it. They'd both been married before. Both carried ghosts that deserved respect. But slowly, carefully, they built something new. 5 months after that first fundraiser, they were all at Megan's house on a Saturday night. The children were in the living room, Elijah teaching Moon and Sky a complicated card game while they taught him a board game they loved. Megan was in the kitchen, and Vincent found himself standing in the doorway, watching his son laugh with the twins. For the first time in 3 years, he felt whole, not healed. Grief didn't work that way. Evelyn's absence would always be a tender place in his heart, but he'd stopped running from it.
He'd learned to carry it alongside the new joy filling his life. Megan appeared beside him, slipping her hand into his. "Happy?" she signed with her free hand. "Yes," Vincent signed back. Finally. That night, after all three kids fell asleep in sleeping bags in the living room after an impromptu camping-themed movie night, Megan and Vincent sat on the back porch under the stars. "I never thought I'd feel this again," Megan whispered. "Complete." "Me neither. But maybe that's what second chances look like. Not replacing what we lost, but building something new alongside those memories." Megan leaned her head on his shoulder. "James would have liked you. Evelyn would have loved you. Probably would have hit me if she knew I'd been running from sign language for 3 years. Megan laughed softly. "She sounds like she was amazing." "She was. And so was James, from everything you've told me. I think they'd be happy we found each other." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to crickets and distant traffic. Two broken people who'd somehow managed to fit their jagged pieces together in a way that worked.
24 months after that fundraiser, Vincent stood in Megan's backyard wearing a suit that actually fit for once, his heart pounding as guests took their seats in neat rows. Elijah stood beside him in a matching suit, fidgeting with his tie. "You nervous, Dad?" Elijah signed. "Terrified," Vincent signed back honestly. Good terrified, though. Moon and Sky appeared in matching pink dresses, carrying small bouquets, their faces glowing with excitement. They took their places on the other side, and then music started, soft and sweet. Megan appeared at the end of the aisle in the simple white dress, carrying wildflowers, her face radiant with a happiness that had taken 2 years to build but was worth every moment. The ceremony was short and sweet. The officiant spoke, but Vincent barely heard the words. He was too busy looking at Megan, at their 3 children standing as witnesses, at this impossible family they'd built from broken pieces. When it came time for vows, Megan's hands moved through sign language as she spoke aloud, her voice steady and clear. "Vincent, you taught me that showing up is an act of courage, that learning someone's language, really learning it, is an act of love. You gave me back my daughters, and you gave them the friend they needed in Elijah. You gave us all permission to grieve what we lost while still choosing to build something beautiful." Vincent's hands shook as he signed his vows. "Megan, you taught me that running from pain doesn't make it hurt less. It just makes you miss the good stuff too. You and your daughters reminded me that my hands were made for building bridges, not pushing people away. You gave Elijah his smile back. You gave us all a reason to stop just surviving and start living again." The officiant pronounced them married, and as they kissed, 3 children stood to the side, signing "I love you" in perfect unison. Elijah, Moon, and Sky, siblings in all the ways that mattered. At the reception, as the sun set and string lights twinkled overhead, Vincent watched the 3 kids run around the yard, playing tag and laughing. Megan stood beside him, her hand in his, both of them marveling at the impossible beauty of this moment.
2 years ago, I was invisible, Vincent said softly, just a janitor pushing a cart, trying not to remember who I used to be. 2 years ago, I was drowning, so focused on control that I couldn't see my daughters were drowning too. And now? Megan smiled. Now we're exactly where we're supposed to be. Vincent thought about that fundraiser, about 2 little girls sitting invisible against a wall, about the choice he'd made to walk over instead of walk away, about how one hello in sign language had cracked open 5 broken lives and let the light pour in. They'd all been shattered, they'd all been lost, but somehow, in finding each other, they discovered that broken pieces could fit together in ways that were even more beautiful than before. Not because they'd forgotten what they'd lost, but because they'd chosen to honor those losses by living fully, loving bravely, and remembering that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop being invisible for yourself and for others who need someone to finally see them. As the evening faded into night, Vincent pulled all 3 children into a group hug, Megan's arms wrapped around them all, and he felt Evelyn's presence like a whisper in the wind. Not sad, not gone, just quietly proud. "You did good," he could almost hear her sign. "You all did so good." And for the first time since that terrible Tuesday 4 years ago when her heart stopped beating, Vincent allowed himself to believe it was true. If this story touched your heart the way it touched mine, if it reminded you that second chances exist, that broken doesn't mean beyond repair, that sometimes all someone needs is to be seen, please don't let it end here. Let it remind you kindness still matters, compassion still changes lives, and hope is never wasted. Subscribe and be part of our Soul Lifts Stories family, where every story lifts the spirit and reminds us that light always finds its way back. And if this moment moved you, share it, because sometimes sharing hope is the kindest thing we can do.